All right, welcome to the Kingdom Point of View again. We up here with our panelists again, Miss Mosley, Mr. Butler. They're gonna help me out today. And so hopefully we got good attendance on our call-ins just as well, and our audience members around. We're gonna let one of the call-ins, as this email done came in, to go ahead and let us know. Let me see. That would be caller number 8, Miss Robinson. Miss Robinson, you still with us?
I am. I'm still here.
All right, I'm gonna put some pressure on you today. I know you're listening in, but we just need someone to form us a question so we can help our panelists and our audience and everyone on the call. Can you give us a question, a topic for today?
Okay, well, I have a question. That question is going to be, what is the proper way to love?
All right, all right. Well, we're gonna break it down on the kingdom point of view. There is a proper way to love, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use one of these callers because our panelists, we're gonna piggyback in on this. I see a couple male callers up there. Can caller number 5? That's Jay Hill. Jay Hill, did you hear what Miss Robinson said in her formal question?
Yes, I heard what Ms. Robinson had to say.
All right, all
When
right.
speaking on that topic, you have to understand and know your target audience and who you're actually communicating with. Because what works for one person may not work for the next person. So you have to understand that person and whatever feedback or negative feedback they actually have, you apply it.
That's very true. Ms. Robinson, do you have a statement for the panel before we get started? That's a great topic, and I can see that's a male response to it, as some of them would say, but it's a definitely good response because it covered both sides. You got any comments on that first, Ms. Robinson, before we proceed?
Yes, I do. I guess when you're speaking on what one considers to be proper love, if it's anything, like you said, from a negative aspect or what someone considers to be a love in their eyes, um, is it, I guess it still boils down to the intentions. Where is it coming from? Is it a love of God?
Mm,
If you don't understand God's love, then you can't really show love to a person or even understand that proper way to love. Um, I guess just saying that if it's in a negative form, it's not really love. That's just what someone likes.
all right, all right. That's good. So that's a good response. If you all call us hold just a minute, I heard the topic and I gave a male a chance to respond, and he's responding universally and just as well as you as the young lady, because we deal with that a lot in conversations on the sessions, from the viewpoints of what they consider a male perspective or a female, but on the kingdom point of view, once you understand the principles, like you pointed out, Ms. Robinson, on that statement, knowing who God is, then you have love, so then you'll know how to actually, as the question is, properly love. And unfortunately, like I've said before in other sessions, it's came to a point in life to where we got to add words before word. So now we got to say proper love, properly love, when love is proper. But here on the kingdom point of view, we're gonna break it down just as well, just as much as we can to help you on the panel. But I would say, starting on the kingdom point of view, the kingdom principles um, work hand in hand. And so knowing who God is love. So you know God, so now you have love because you've accepted God. Now in accepting God, now you can give exactly what you've received. So now you're giving someone else love, and like you stated, the caller, Ms. Robinson, that a lot of times those things come conditional. And those conditions are likes. And because they are likes, now they begin to mask what is used. They're using love, that's in the term, but it's really masked, underneath with a like. And because that's a condition, love is unconditional. So now the displacement of the term love has made you, as a caller, say properly love, because you already, from that standpoint, I could probably go back in your mind from that to say you thought that love was love, but now you got to say property love because it's been abused, obviously, to have something in front of it. So now, because of that misuse, and most people are using conditions in a form of love, or what is called in Greek mythology conditional loves, when you begin to break down the eros, that's a sexual romantic type of love, which is only in that section of a condition. It's not the godly love, which is the agape. But most people are not really being true to themselves in their expression of the communication of love, which is that type of love language that is needed so that there won't be no misunderstanding. So people are giving a love, but not really communicating that they're in a division of those types of love, because that love is a condition from that standpoint. As long as you're satisfying me in this exotic way, oh, I love that. And the moment that stops, now all of a sudden the love of the term love, which means, unconditional, which is agape, which the other person may have perceived that you were saying, now it doesn't even exist. And now you're in the standpoint, meaning the person who becomes the victim of that is saying, I thought you loved me. But it was never communicated. So we're going to have to deal with the fundamentals on we already know that we've expressed what love is, dealing with God, but we got to deal with the language part of the love, which is going to be the communication that's going to make it, as the caller has said, proper love, so we can apply it. Because I heard from one of the callers before that we know that love is an action, and we got to be able to apply love in its right way so that it can be received, as the young lady has said, properly. So I'm going to give one or two of my panelists up here a chance to bring us a little bit more perspective, and we'll bring it home on the Kingdom Point of View as you stay tuned with us. Who want to give us a shout up here to help us out a little bit?
You mentioned love language, and I had heard many people talking about the book, The 5 Love Languages, but I had never read it until maybe about a year or so ago. And so what was so interesting to me is that, yes, we do have that model of that unconditional love from God, but many of us have a certain way that we like to be loved and we like to feel loved. And that's okay, and so many times we get wrapped up into, so-and-so don't love me, or am I receiving this love? But we're really not understanding that, it goes back to what we talked about on another Kingdom Point of View, is the preferences in how you like to be loved. And so you have to understand that love looks differently, like I said, for other people. It comes from getting to know one another. Say, for instance, if you haven't read the book, but one of the love languages is acts of service. One of them is words of affirmation. And so I like somebody to talk to me good.
Oh.
Okay. And so my husband ain't with all that talking.
Oh.
He ain't studying that, because people can, and that's true, people can say anything but not really do it. So his is acts of service, which is another love language. Correct. And so there was so much friction in our relationship for many years, and it's still a mastering. I still haven't necessarily mastered the application, but just knowing that there is a different ways that people like to be loved, and understanding that I can say I love him, because I tell him all the time, I love you, and he be like, girl, go on somewhere, what you want. What you want, but that's just not the way that he likes to be shown love. Now, if I cook him a meal,
oh, what?
I'm getting somewhere.
Okay, you figured it out.
If I'm doing something, he cares more about, what I can do for him, more than me telling me he look good, or I love you, or everybody wants to hear good. Everybody wants to be appreciated. But we have to understand that just because you like to be loved a certain way doesn't mean that that's the way that your spouse or your partner likes to be loved. So when you said that about the love language, it just made me think of all the different, and I'm sure that, that book is just a small, but that book was such a good reference point to say that there's different ways that people like to be loved.
Absolutely. What you got for us, Mr. Butler?
That book was one of the books that launched me. The author's Gary Chapman. He writes really good books, write really well. In fact, when I was married the first time, my wife, how she got me to read it, they
Right.
were in a book club, and my wife, they were in a book club with the five love languages. The women were reading, and she brought it home. We were in Cherry Tree Hill, apartment L3, and she said, "I want you to read this book." And I looked at the book, and I looked on the back of the book, and it was a Caucasian guy with glasses on. And I remember saying, "What is he gonna tell me about a woman from Fort Hill who grew up on Norris Street?" And well, my wife told me, "If you read this book, I owe you a couple favors." And me being who I was willing to make that trade.
All right. And that's good.
So I started reading the book, and I started loving the book, but loving Gary Chapman as an author all by himself. One of the things that I've always taken from the love, you have to become bilingual in your spouse's language. But we usually give from our own love
That's
language.
right. That's
so
right.
if I need affirmation, I give affirmation to think you're not getting it. And if mine is acts of service, I'm giving you acts of service. So I'm going to give, my pour is going to be from my need. And so that's what happens a lot of times, even when it comes from men and women. He's giving the best he can. He's giving the best of what he, that's why you hear men say, "What is she talking about? I don't love her. I paid the bill. I did this. I did that." And all she wanted you to do was sit there and listen to her emotionally, what she was going through, and unpack and tell her how beautiful she is and things are going to be okay. And so you have to find out. Another session, you talked about the fact of having that list that's going to constantly change, that's going to be constantly evolving. And that's the love language, just an open door. And like one of the callers said, but you have to first understand God's law.
Yes.
But you have to be able to have an open dialogue with your spouse to be able to say, what do you need? How do you want to receive it? A lot of times men have trouble because women say things like, he should just know. No, we don't. There's no manual that we have as men that give us the list of understanding and just knowing, and we're not able to read your mind and say exactly. But if you can tell us what you want, how you want it, it's just like going to a restaurant. They're gonna ask you, how do you want your steak? Do you want onions on it? You don't walk in a restaurant, sit down and say, well, just bring me something. You should know what I want. I came here 5 times. You have to clearly communicate what your needs are, or they won't be met. But being bilingual is learning a new language. You have to learn and understand what their needs are. If it's acts of service, if it's physical touch, if it's whatever, affirmation. And so then you have to understand sometimes what is number 1 to them may be number 5 on your list.
Correct.
So you got to work harder, and you can't make them feel small for their needs being what they are. And in the kingdom perspective, you should be constantly investigating and learning to understand your spouse better. Because after a while, it gets to the point, love is anticipating a need before they even speak of it.
That's
Absolutely.
right. Oh, when you was just talking, I was just thinking about, the commandments that God has given us is to love the Lord God with all of our heart, and then also to love our neighbor as ourselves. And if we're truly loving our neighbor as we would love ourselves, first of all, I hope that we love ourselves. We already talked about how we have to love ourselves.
Right.
And so if we're loving our neighbor the way that we're loving ourselves, then, we want to be accepted. We want to feel a certain type of way. And so, like you said, if we're doing that, then we're going to be thinking about what does my spouse need? What is my spouse like? It's going to come from that place in your heart, because you're going to genuinely seek to meet that person's need, because you love them properly.
Absolutely.
So, I just thought about that when you were saying that, just thinking about those commandments. And if we really truly take those things to heart, then it's going to come out of, of our being. It's going to come out into our actions in how we treat people, and just like whether, and it goes bigger than a girlfriend, a spouse, because even my children tell me,
All right.
I don't like you holler at me too much. I'm still gonna holler a little bit, but sometimes I do have to take that in and understand.
All
like
right.
both of my children are 8 years apart, and they're both very different.
Okay.
And so I have what works for one don't work for another.
right.
But if I think that if I continue to think they're just like me, if I continue to think I just want to parent like my mama, not understanding this is a different day, a different time, the principles are still the same, but the method might have to change in
All
the
right.
way that I treat them. Like I said, it's bigger than just, you know, girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse. It even goes into how you treat your children. But if you have that love of God, that model that God has set in those commandments that God has given us in your heart, then you will want to do that in a genuine way. It'll just be a natural thing for you.
All right, that's real good. Though you all have dropped some real good components, and I'm gonna take them like I'm talking to the kindergartens. You know, I'm gonna use the things. I'm gonna use some utensils around here. We're gonna use some measuring cups.
All right, come on.
You know, I heard
Break
this
it down
term.
for us.
I heard this term that was used when he said that men, you know, see it this way. And I have to clean it up because there are some male men that are getting credit from some other male men that are on different levels. So we're gonna say measuring cups.
Okay.
You know, people that know how to cook, or if you don't know how to cook, you know what a measurement is, and just imagine a cup. So we talking about a measuring cup. There are some men who are already spiritually grounded, and that's their gallon, okay? And then there are other men who are 2 ounces, and then we got a lot of them in between. There are different levels, but they're all men that are males, okay? There's a breakdown in it. Some do not understand who God is. So what happens in that male man, a lot of them bunch themselves up, and the same process worked for the women. So watch this. Just imagine the measuring cups, you know, those who ever cooked, or even if you got different pots, you got bigger boiling pots to smaller boiling pots. It's the same concept. So therefore, a lot of times, the improper way, like the caller Ms. Robinson asked, what is the proper way to love? Some people only have an ounce of love, okay? And they're pouring into a person that they meet, maybe like Ms. Robinson, who is a big pot.
Right.
So they dumping their full ounce into a big pot. And now they anticipating that the big pot should be overwhelmed.
Right.
And now the big pot is saying, you don't know how to properly love me. And now the misunderstanding in communication could be this, that the big pot may not have known that they poured their all into them. Because the communication of the love languages is what is being understood from the perspective on knowing who you're dealing with.
Right.
That was the first way. So I would have to say to Ms. Robinson, step 1, my point would be, know who you're dealing with. And the only way you're gonna know that, know yourself. Once you know who you are, it becomes our responsibility not to allow anything that's not compatible. You know, when you got these different pots and these different measuring cups and different things, they have what they call lids. And all lids don't fit on every pot.
That's right.
Sometimes you could put a lid on a pot that's too big, but it still covered it. So now, when you begin to boil things or cook, it could actually run over because it was too big of a cover, okay? If you don't have the proper lid that inserts correctly, and that's only decided by the person who's doing the cooking. So whoever, to whom much is given, much is required. So therefore, we have to be very mindful of what pot or what measurement we are, and then we got to be careful on what lid we're putting on it, because that's going to determine how the cooking process goes, because you can actually lose all the flavor and the seasoning in something if you don't have the right top on it or don't even have a top on it at all. And if you pour too much of something, let's take it the opposite way. Here you are, a big measuring cup, and you pouring into something small, okay? But because they say they are a cup, you figure I'm a cup too. These are the ways on how you, from affirmation to the conversation. So now you saying I'm gonna pour my affirmation into the conversation, and then now it don't work because see, now we missed the component. See, but if we understood who we were more, in which most of the time we do, because it was just said that you really do it from a need standpoint. So because I know I would need affirmation, now I'm gonna pour back in affirmation. But that was the first step of self, but that was the bilingual part that you mentioned. Did I ever pay attention to what I was pouring into, or did I just go masking my vision and thinking, since I need it only, I'm gonna pour like this consistently with everything I encounter, and then when this one get too much on it, and then it can't handle the love, and then you say, what's wrong? Because you already know what you can handle. Your measuring cup, your pot is a different liter or different ounce. So we got to be very careful. So the components that I just used for the ABC, not only we got to know the pots and the measurement, we got to know the right lids. And then when you get the cooking and you get the pouring stuff, or even if you get the mixing, what about the sports drinks and the thing that they say you can shake it up? So if you get the right sport drink, and now that's an 8 ounce or a 16 or 24, and you put the wrong top on and you think you're going to shake that protein shake, now you start losing protein. Now you know you need protein. Now you don't put in some work. You don't exert the energy, and now you lacking protein, not because you didn't put the proper ingredients in, not that you didn't have the right technique or knowledge or understanding, but now the wisdom was lacking because the application was wrong, in the sense you didn't screw the top on tight, or the top didn't even fit at all, but you still went to shaking, and you take it to the pots, you put it in there, and maybe the top fell in the big pot, okay? And so now the stuff boiled on top of the pot, on top of the top in the pot, and now you don't even see the top, and you like, you're not me on my level. Where you at? All this stuff I'm giving you, you don't cover them up because you don't put the wrong things on the wrong components. So it's so many variables that take place on this love language. So I use the cooking utensils as an idea of saying that not only do we need to have a self-discovery, we know God is love. Once we understand that, we've poured that love into us, and that love become an action, like Mr. Hill said on the line, and Ms. Robinson said, properly loving properly comes with the actual steps. I learned this from Miles Monroe. He said, we get cookbooks, and every cookbook got pictures. He said, we fall in love with the pictures. The pictures is actually what we're looking for, the end result. Right. He said, but what happens on that picture in our cookbooks, they have this list of things, and they are listed, they have the ingredients, and they have the recipe. He said, so what happens a lot of times, we'll have all the right ingredients. We'll go to the grocery store and get all the right ingredients, but we're so caught up in the picture, we never do the recipe, which is the right order. Right. So you can actually have the right ingredients and the wrong recipe, and it still not even come out right. And just like I used them examples of the measuring cups and the pot, you can probably have the right ingredients and the right recipe and the wrong utensils. So some things require a little bit more special blending. You can't sit up there and mix some things in order to bake a cake right. You better get one of them real blenders, or you better have a good wrist, because it got to be mixed right. So there are so many components, Ms. Robinson, in properly doing things that we have to take a totality, Martin Luther King called it, a world perspective on everything that we're going to do. And the words say this, and there's many examples that we can use. It says, count the cost. That means that you're working backwards. You've already assessed, okay, what is it going to take for me to even receive exactly what I'm expecting? And once we do all that, we're going to make sure a real cook or somebody that understands, or may on another session where they say the experience has cost us. Now, we know before we start cooking, if we know we need to put a lid on, we don't want to lose no season, we're going to make sure that top fit. Right. You know, I mean, I know me specifically now, I don't have no special kitchen where I got all these tops in the right place with the pan. So I had to go in there and get a top out of there and test it to make sure that it fit right. And so that's what we have to do. We need to go ahead and do the model test before we start cooking. You know, these are getting all the proper ingredients, the right utensils, and then start making sure that it fits right, and then say, okay, well, I know this gonna work, and then I got everything I need over here. Now I need to follow the recipe. So a lot of times we've started doing the recipe, taking the steps, and hand checked our own utensils. Some things are lacking. We may not have the proper tools to mix things up once we put it in the pot, but we had the right pot. We had the right lid. We got the right ingredients. But did we have the other utensils it take? You know, sometimes that could be money managing. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes that can be willing to have tough discussions. Sometimes that could be, as I just heard, the bilingual, you know, the understanding. Sometimes it could be, you know, the long suffering part. You know, it could be what is the word called seasons. Are we willing to deal with the idea that I'm a little more energetic and they're not? So guess what? You don't require them to be energetic because you already energetic. So don't worry about them being energetic. You see what I'm saying? So when you add to them, now it's going to wash itself out. You know, so you have to learn your mate, and you know, after you've understood who you are, Because once you understand who you are, the most important thing in that component is not trying to make your spouse be you.
Yep, that's it.
That's what's key. You can't make the spoon be a fork.
That's right.
But they both are very, very helpful according to what you're gonna eat and what you're gonna need at the time. Because see, you may be better in this area and they may be better in that area, and it's no problem for the fork to tell the spoon, well, it's time for us to eat cereal, and I need you to be who you need to be, because I sure love that milk every time I crunch on this cereal. I can get the cereal, but I'm gonna lose all the milk. Now I can get the milk at the end, but it might not really be the process on how I wanna eat my cereal, and I just know that you're the best person for the job, although I'm still the fork. So all of those components, makes a difference in the example that I'm using, so that we can kind of give an ABC too, even though people that are on a certain level understood it from an ABC from the example that we gave earlier. But I love to draw certain examples,
Right.
so that we put them in a situation where one of the people in one of my classes say, I'm gonna make sure you have no excuse when you leave out of here. It's okay? Because a lot of times, they got them easy bake ovens and everything, and them children already playing with these forks and spoons and pots. So maybe that can help them understand how I need to make sure that people use this term, measure up to what I need them to be, to my measurement. And there's nothing wrong with no one measurement. If you're an ounce, it's okay. And you can pour into someone who is a bigger ounce than you are, because it don't require the same type of ingredients. You don't have to fill the pot up with sugar in order for it to be sweet. Sometimes it just takes a dab. So you might run across somebody that say, well, I don't need much now, because I'm already a whole pot,
Right.
okay? I just need you to be who you are. Or pretty much they're saying, just be who you say you are. And a lot of times that works, a lot of times, because we do. What you got for me, Mr. Butler? Help me out. You bobbing over there.
Pass the collection plate.
Man, I'm just going to pause.
Turn that
for a
mic
second.
up loud. I don't know.
Oh, I'm just going to pause for a second.
Just pause. Okay, I seen you bobbing.
But
I just a moment.
I
Okay.
definitely want to speak.
Yes, sir. That's
on
all
what you
right.
were
Take your
saying
time.
About communication. Man, that was good. About that pour. I'm still there.
That's all right.
Sometimes it get good. But seriously, about that communication, about understanding what that spouse needs, that communication has to be ongoing, because what they needed yesterday, they might not need today.
Yeah.
What they liked 2 months ago, they might not like it. And you have to notice those changes. And so that becomes an ongoing you are constantly investigating this person to understand what their needs are. And it should be a mutual thing.
Correct.
That they're doing this. I'm serving you, you are serving in every level, that when it comes down to the relationship, from the conversation to friendship to intimacy, everything is about being able to serve that other person and understand what they need. And like you said, about what you're pouring in, and to understand what is their measurement, what can they handle, how much, because if I got a gallon and you a half a gallon, you only need half of what I need. But I need to know how much do you need to function. And I have to respect you and say, because you a half a gallon, you ain't nothing, you filled up. Because I'm a gallon, I said, you would give the illustration all the time. There's nothing wrong with a watermelon, just as long as you don't expect to be a grape.
Absolutely.
Because when you start expecting the watermelon to be a grape,
Absolutely.
then that's a problem.
That's the problem.
See, I just need you to be the grape. I need you to make purple juice. And,
which-
whatever you're supposed to do as a grape.
That's
I
it.
need you to live up to great capability.
That's it.
And so that's kind of how it is, even when it comes to understanding that love language and being able to communicate your needs and not expecting them to figure it out or pick it up along the way.
Correct.
Sometimes we as men, and even kingdom men, we make sometimes she can say we need to talk, and we like, Lord have mercy, what in the world is gonna be when she want to talk, and you trying to go through a whole list of what you messed up on. But you have to have and find a way, when is the best time to communicate to your spouse what you need. Is it in the morning? Is it midday? Is it in the evening? What's the best time? Because if you are married, your spouse has a way of shining the light on your shortcomings.
Absolutely.
They love you, but they're also going to see your blind spots.
Correct.
And sometimes it can be uncomfortable when somebody's shining a light on your blind. And sometimes you need to work on that. They right. They're telling you the truth. But it's about understanding, like you said, about that pour, and not putting the lid on it. Giving them the ability to say, listen, I love you, but I love you enough to also allow you to be who you are. And I don't want to change you. You're going to evolve because you're going to come a different person with me, who you were now. Because once we're together, we're going to evolve. I'm going to change. You're going to change. Life is going to happen. We're going to lose people. We're going to get gray hair and different things are going to happen over time. But what you're letting your spouse, you should be letting your spouse know, is we'll be friends and we'll figure this thing out together.
Correct.
In the end, it'll be us two. And that's what it should be about for us understanding that love. Like you said, understanding the poor. I think that is the root cause of so many problems that make couples, instead of attacking the problem, they attack each other.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yes. So you basically saying you got to know yourself. Know thyself.
All right.
Know what you need. Know what you're looking for, so that you can know what don't fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. And those components, I'm going to see if anyone in the audience have anything to say. Anyone from the audience?
Jay Hill.
Jay Hill say he got something. What you got for us, Mr. Hill? And
Yeah, well, it goes back with what you. It goes
Go
back
ahead.
to that recipe card.
That's right.
I believe in First Corinthians, I think the 13th chapter, it discusses about uh, it does not insist on its own way. It can't always be about my way, but what's conducive to thus says the Lord.
Okay. Well, I can go for it, Jay Hill. You got them cell phones and stuff. I would love to hear that verse verbatim. You might have said it right, but when you go ahead and look it up while our next caller call in, or either audience member comment. I need one of these young ladies on the call. Ms. Robinson, you started this conversation. What you got for us? And Jay Hill, definitely look that up for us so we can get it and share it just as well. I would love to hear exactly how it is. Anybody in the audience got any comments before I sum up? Anybody in the audience? No one. All right. Well, check this out.
I got to pull it up.
What you got?
Yeah, I got First Corinthians pulled up now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This is coming from the English Standard Version. It's First Corinthians 13th chapter and the fifth verse. It said, it does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believe all things, hope all things, endure all things.
Love never fails. Absolutely. Absolutely. I just wanted you to read it because definitely it's definitely a core understanding on kingdom principles. Yeah. And so it's always good to have the interaction with the callers. So I definitely wanted you to read that because it's very well understood that we're going to say that love don't boast, love don't brag, love don't delight in wrongdoing, love rejoices in truth, love never fails. Those are core principles when it comes to love. You know, so if you understanding it from that perspective, you know, in these core values, in that proper way to love, as Ms. Robinson said on the call, then you got to understand order. That's why I use the recipe, the ingredients, what Maya Monroe said from that perspective. I used my own idea when it came to the pots and the utensils because you got to understand order. You got to understand that when you're giving love, that you're not going to brag because you're only being exactly who you are. You have love, so you giving love, so you operate in love. So there's nothing to boast about. Just a car, your car sitting out there in the driveway don't have to boast that it's a car. It's just sitting there. You know why? Because that's what it is. You know, nothing has to boast what it is. You know, so when it says love rejoices in truth, because God is love and God is the truth. So the rejoicing comes with that. So we got to understand those type of things, and those are fundamental components that will help us in the translations that take place, and knowing that love language, the communications, you know, to learning your spouse, you know, to knowing that you don't have to actually, because you have a need, don't automatically assume that's what the other person wants. So we're giving many examples that can probably help the components as we move forward, but it starts with self. As Ms. Mosley reiterated, that if you're not searching on who you are and you haven't already received the love, which is God, you need to go get that first. because anything else that you operating with will be a condition, like Miss Robinson said on the call. That love that is being said has conditions in it. It's alike. It has been masked with the term love because it only wanted to receive the benefits of love. It didn't want to actually be what love actually supposed to be. And listen to the term I just said. It did not want to be love, not do love. See, when it has a condition, it do love from one perspective. It don't never be love, because when you be it, you'll do it. Yeah. It just comes automatically. If we say that is an apple, when you cut it, it's still an apple. When you squish it or however they do it or press it on that juicer, now it's apple juice. It didn't have to do juice, it was being an apple. So all of these components come out of it because you are being exactly who you're supposed to be. And granted, we all know that we have learned these concepts and ideas from the format or the position that we are in life, because our culture or environment and other influences of the world, the television and things that don't always have the most positive things to keep us anchored in kingdom principles, but we still have to push forward so that we can learn and then begin to be patient. You know, we got to be patient enough, because if you don't have the patience, you don't have the fruits of the Spirit, then you're definitely going to be lacking this bilingual, as I just heard up here, because you're going to need all of these components of that tree, because they all tied into how God operates with us, from that forgiveness that we talk about, the patience, the love. All of these things have to be rooted in you. That's why these examples of the tree is used so many times in the Word. A tree that's planted like rivers of water. Why do you think these trees? Because the concept of a tree becomes such an easy analogy, something to be able to understand, because we see trees all the time. We see trees grow. We see trees change in season, as I heard about. These are the changes in a relationship. The leaves on most of them are green at one point, and then they begin to turn brown. And some of them fall off. So as your relationship, your marriage falls off, the first thing you need, when I say fall off, that doesn't deplete it. You have to see when the leaf falls off, that means it's leaving room for growth, because the only thing that needs to be certain about the marriage and the relationship is the foundation right. Is the tree still planted in the soil, or the roots deep down? Do I still have my branches? Am I still producing? Because the season have came to where now it's just turned a little brown, but because the leaf turned brown don't mean it was dying. So all of these things are necessary in that love language and knowing how to properly love. So an example of a leaf turning brown would be something like your mate may say, I want to go to school, and the house have enough income to where the man could actually do it, or vice versa for the situation where it could better the family. So it's just brown now because they just laid them off. So you have to do what you have to do, you know, because that doesn't mean, hey, tomorrow got his own problem. So everything will begin to change just a matter of time, because the key component is there. You're rooted in God, so God is going to give you all of the desires that you ask for. And the principle of the kingdom is, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things that we're discussing will be added unto you. And that will be the proper way to love, and that will be the proper way to do anything according to the word of God, because it's a principle that will never fail, because God don't go against his promise, and he definitely don't go against his word. So those components will help you get where you need to get. And I'm helping you out, Jay Hill, or any callers in the audience. We want to hear from y'all up here, because y'all about to make me turn on fire up here trying to explain this thing, because I love it. I love it now. Got anything, Jay Hill?
You got me full over here, brother.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. All right, our panelists up here, we got you right. We got you right.
You got us right tonight.
All right.
How to love properly.
How to love properly. That's a good topic over there. Look like our audience members over there bobbing their head good. So it look like we got them on fire tonight. But it's mostly about receiving this information, because there's a process in understanding it. That's why we give different breakdowns, because we're trying to get you to understand it from different little components and things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And once you begin to understand it from that perspective, now we move into the wisdom. Knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And so now you can apply it. but you can't understand what you don't know. And you can apply something you don't understand, but it will be the wrong thing that you apply. So that's what understanding being that meat, that meat on the bone, that substance, that in between, that is that glue. That's the word I'm looking for. That's that glue. That understanding is the glue. I think I said on another session before, you can know what a stop sign is, but you can still run through it. So you can apply not stopping. See, that could be the wisdom, but you need to understand that you need to stop because you could have a wreck or cause someone else to be in the wreck. So when you hammer in all your get an understanding, if you stay right there with understanding your mate, understanding yourself, now you will apply understanding properly, as the topic is today. The proper way to love. So I was definitely said from those components, and it looked like I got everybody moving in a good way today. And it looked like we might be on a good understanding. Jay Hill is full up there, and many others are quiet. So I already know we smashing the gas in the right direction. So once again, thank you for coming out on the Kingdom Point of View, and you can email in and come in on the studio or call, and we'll catch you next time.